On today's video of Unpopular Opinions, we are looking at Mr. Terrific, a character who by some is considered to be one of the smartest men on Earth, if not the absolute smartest character on Earth, and a character who, might I say, is maybe being noticed and slightly ever being popularized recently because there have been quite a few people over time who have noticed this character and just simply realized that he should maybe be used just a little bit more than he was at that time. Now, it might not really be a better time to talk about the character than it currently is right now, considering he has shown up in recent comic books more often than he has before, and he also showed up in the latest Superman movie. With that being said, let's look at some of your unpopular opinions and see what you all had to say on Mr. Terrific. The first comment here coming from Abe. When people bring up Mr. Terrific or Michael Holt, it is always about how he is one of the smartest DC characters and never about what he has actually done. They limit him to intellect, not impact. He is rarely treated as a main character, more like a background genius people name drop when talking about the smartest in DC, but his legacy deserves more than that. He is one of the few second-generation heroes who took up a mantle and made it his own, not by copying, but by evolving it. When you compare that to Batman or Mr. Fantastic, people highlight their accomplishments, the inventions, the fights, the leadership, but with Mr. Terrific, they just stop at he is smart. In reality, he has all the potential to redefine what that means. He does not need to be a leader or the loudest voice in the room. His greatness is in the balance between genius, discipline, and humanity. Mr. Terrific is not just a name, he is a blueprint for what intellect with purpose should look like. He just never gets the credit he deserves. This comment may not necessarily be an unpopular opinion to most, but it is 100% one of the most accurate comments I read here. I even fall into that same trap. So, for example, if someone were to ask, what is Mr. Terrific? Who is he? What's he good at? What's he known for? It's very easy to sit here and say, oh crap, I actually don't know all that much other than he is presented to be one of the smartest characters in DC. But it's exactly like you say. Why, though? What are his accomplishments? What is it exactly he has done to earn that type of title? And I think it's a double situation here. One, it is on the fans who don't know his accomplishments and don't know everything the character's been through, just knowing the generic idea of his intelligence. And it's also an issue with DC's publication. Doing things and creating things for this character no one really knows about because they don't push it enough, they don't talk about it enough, and then when they do something on a grand scale with Mr. Terrific, again, they don't really make it known. They just move on from it. Perhaps it is time that he does get that credit, and perhaps it's time that his intelligence, his genius, does start to get put on full display so that everyone can now really appreciate what this character is all about. UniverseChronology. Michael Holt should be tied very closely to the superhero community since the formation of the Justice League. While I don't think he should be a founding member or anything, I think it would be cool if Michael Holt was either the go-to guy for making technology, and I like this idea that it was him that designed the technology for the Justice League satellite years before he was ever actually a hero. Then after the satellite is destroyed and the OG Justice League starts to disband and be replaced by newer members, it's when Michael Holt starts becoming a hero himself. I think it would be really cool if it was actually him that brought back the Justice Society in modern times, and that it's him that primarily leads the team, perhaps alongside Hawkman and later Power Girl. I think it would even be cool to keep the relationship between Mr. Terrific and Power Girl from the New 52. I think it's great. Yeah, I think this is a really neat idea, laying down some groundwork of a character who we can all look at and one day say, hey, he will be a hero. He has importance. It's just that time has not particularly come yet. And I think it would add that if a lot of the technology that the Justice League satellite was powered off of came from him, or maybe some of his ideas and designs. Now, I will say, in defense of Batman, you do still need to keep that genius factor in play for that character amongst a team of gods. So Batman needs to be heavily tied, I believe, in the construction of the satellite, and a lot that is created there needs to be from his mind, because then if you just make it that it is Mr. Terrific this whole time who powered everything, then Batman loses a key factor of his character that makes him so important. Again, that's not to say that Batman can't go to Mr. Terrific for certain ideas, but that could be a part of his story. You give him some credit for certain things that the satellite had. But then on top of that, when a DC universe spans out and its history grows, not only do you have key evidence of his intelligence, which is what a lot of people talk about with him, but now you have a certain reason why he is popularized and why he should be taken seriously. A guy who brings the Justice Society back to life. This now goes beyond how smart he is, and it could potentially show that he is a leader, that he is to be respected in that fashion as well. Respect my personal space. Mr. Terrific should have been chosen to be in the New 52 Justice League instead of Cyborg. His characterization throughout that era of the comics is more similar to Mr. Terrific anyway. I think his level of swagger and established history with the JSA would make him a better fit. This would probably make him a pretty well recognized character by the mainstream. Maybe he'd replace Cyborg in the Snyderverse JL. Maybe Terrific fans dodged a bullet. I still like Cyborg, just not how he was in the New 52. So I agree and disagree. I think one of the biggest reasons why they chose someone like a Cyborg over a Mr. Terrific, when you analyze both characters' powers, abilities, personalities, what the characters have to offer on a grand scheme of a DC universe, which again, to be part of the Justice League, no longer just means taking care of Earth. It now means taking care of the entire universe. I think DC went down the route of Cyborg potentially having more to offer there. And then obviously bridging in the fact that he's from the mother boxes, his technology at least. I think they also believed that kids, teenagers, young adults, and older adults who have been reading comic books for years would attract more to Cyborg than they would Mr. Terrific. In a way, I guess you could say you already have a human in Batman who is part of the Justice League. Why would you now have another human genius in Mr. Terrific who's part of the Justice League, whereas Cyborg has more going for him? But overall, I can't deny Mr. Terrific being on a mainline Justice League, the founding Justice League. That would be kind of interesting. However, in terms of the Snyderverse Justice League lineup, I think it was already being questioned by a lot of people, thinking, I'm surprised Cyborg's part of this team. Why isn't it Martian Manhunter or a Green Lantern or even Hawkman or Hawkgirl? I think the only bullet that Mr. Terrific fans would have been dodging, if he was part of the Snyderverse Justice League, you would probably even have more people who would have sat here and said, Mr. Terrific? Why? Why is he on the founding Justice League? You have so many other primetime characters to choose from, and you go with Mr. Terrific. That's probably the bullet he'd be dodging. And I can hear it right now. I can even see it perfectly in my mind of comment sections, people saying, who cares about Mr. Terrific if a decision like that was made at that time? There are a lot of fans in the DC community who are fickle and bandwagony. Even though we could sit here today and say Mr. Terrific would have maybe been a cool option for that, back then, some of those same people would have said this is the stupidest idea I've ever seen. Statwing. Mr. Terrific shouldn't be the third smartest man alive. He should be the smartest. His genius isn't driven by ego like Luthor or trauma like Batman. It's pure intellect with purpose. Also, he works best in a small, tight team before eventually stepping up to the Justice League. Yeah, another discussion here on Mr. Terrific's intelligence. It might actually be the unpopular opinion in this comment section to think that he shouldn't be the smartest man alive. It works the same way strength and powers do in DC. I feel like once you have one intelligent person, you then have tons of intelligent other characters. Then what happens is the power scaling just gets completely thrown off, and when one character has to do something super intelligent, another character has to do something super intelligent, and it just keeps stacking itself on top of each other over and over. And I've said this before about strength and powers in DC before. Whenever someone does something super incredible in strength feats, there's somebody else who has to better that, which means that character who got bettered has to find a way to better that one again. Comics are never changing and they never sit still. So if Mr. Terrific ever does something that is on a whole other level of genius, Batman will one day do something that's even above him, which then means Mr. Terrific will have to beat that one day, which then Batman will beat that one day, and then Lex Luthor will follow up. And the cycle just continues. But in terms of working on a small team, I do naturally agree. I'm not saying Mr. Terrific can't belong on a Justice League team of sorts. However, I think the Terrifics is actually one of the perfect places for him. Not just the team itself, but the size of the team. Him and 3 or 4 other characters keeping the team more solidified. Teams that keep him tethered to discovering, learning, and figuring out the technologically unknown is the place for him. Tombstoner forever. Mr. Terrific isn't interesting to me as a solo hero. I like him more as part of an ensemble. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion based off of people around the DC community who are slowly becoming bigger fans of him as time goes on, but I do actually think a majority of people would agree with this. I don't think they're really interested in Mr. Terrific on his own, and I do believe he probably works better when he's surrounded by other characters and personalities. That's not to say that Mr. Terrific can't be the main in those stories, but what's important is that he's with other people. Which then it kind of leads me into this comment right here from LeoChaseTheMythMaster. Hot take, he's been pushed too far too forcefully. Explanation. I've never heard of him before a few months ago, but in general, I don't like him as I feel he's been overhyped in a way and suddenly he's the coolest guy ever. It's great for lesser known characters to come into the limelight and I'm sure he's a great character. I just don't want to keep hearing how awesome and powerful and underrated he is. All I'll say is this does tend to happen with comic book characters quite a lot. Some character will make his name known for whatever reason, and then all of a sudden you have months on end where people claim they were always a fan of the character, that they've always been the #1 supporter, and that there is so much about them that makes them so cool, so stupidly strong, super smart, same situation, and the fact that he's been or she's been far too underrated for far too long. And I'm not going to go out and say that Mr. Terrific is a prime example of it, but I do have to say so myself. I have seen a lot of that type of reaction on his character. Now, all of a sudden, now that Superman has come and gone, you barely hear about this character all over again. That also kind of leads me into this comment from Lady Lark. I haven't seen the Superman done by James Gunn, but I have seen bits and pieces, and I feel like his version of Mr. Terrific is awful. Whenever I think of Mr. Terrific, I think of why he became Mr. Terrific. About that comic scene where he was going to unalive himself because of the loss of his wife and unborn child. How Spectre stopped him by talking about the previous Mr. Terrific, and how this one dedicates himself to getting criminals to have some morals or lines they won't cross. How the previous Mr. Terrific saved his life even though they never met. I feel like if this sadness and willpower isn't shown, then you don't really have our Mr. Terrific. Apologies if this is convoluted. No worries at all. Now, before I get into this comment, I do have to say, and I'm sure a lot of people on this channel might be surprised, but it gives some insight on why I haven't talked about it. I also have not seen Superman from James Gunn. I have next to no interest, and based off of everything I've seen in the movie, it's not a movie for me. It was not necessarily made for a demographic like me, and that's why I've stayed away from it. because I just don't really care. That goes for the Superman movie and James Gunn's DCU altogether. Not interested. The reason why I don't talk about these types of issues is because I do think there is this very weird phenomenon going on in DC and the communities where if you have even one little negative thing to say about what they're doing with this DCU, you're immediately branded as a hater, you're ruthlessly insulted, and you're claimed to not know anything about DC. So that's why I don't really like talking about that side of DC. But in terms of this comment, and based off of the certain clips I've seen of Mr. Terrific, just like most of the movie, yeah, I don't like what I'm seeing. I can't necessarily say I know everything because I've never seen the full movie, but based off of those scenes, yeah, I'm not a fan of it. And I don't blame you for not being a fan of it and maybe having what you've seen put you off from the movie entirely. It's a little tough to handle a character like Mr. Terrific because what do you do in this situation? Do you make his own entire project a movie or a TV show? You can't do that. It won't be successful. Not enough comic book fans are going to be interested, let alone casual audiences. That's not going to work. So you put him in somebody else's movie. But then the problem of putting him in someone else's project is exactly what you say here. Some of the most fantastic details about the Mr. Terrific character can't really be dived into because the movie is not necessarily about him. It's about somebody else. So all of those factors that you love about the character or that make him interesting probably won't really show itself. I mean, to be completely honest, based off of who I know James Gunn to be in his crafting of storytelling and directing, a lot of his movies are comedic ensembles. And based off of Mr. Terrific, he doesn't necessarily fit that vibe all too well. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is nothing there to really make that character stand on its own two legs. Not in terms of interest in maybe cool spectacles and scenes, but in terms of who the character's backstory and origin is. That's something you just have to wait for a different project, if that even ever happens. Overall, though, you're not the only person here who did say that they didn't like the way he was handled in the movie, so perhaps there is something there. Now, for today, guys, I don't technically have an unpopular opinion. Overall, I do think he's a pretty good character who could potentially have a bright future ahead of him. So there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts on Mr. Terrific, along with some of yours. So with that being said, I'm sure there are some unpopular opinions that people didn't get the chance to put into the comment section prior, so leave them in the comment section of this video. But also let me know who you'd like to see for other unpopular opinion videos. That is all I have for you on this video, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed it, and until the next time, I will talk to you all very soon.